Today is 23rd of July 2009, and we finished the first book of the Samyutta Nikaya. Now we come to the second book. This second book is called the Nidana Vaga, the Book of Causation. And this book contains 10 Samyuttas, and the first is the Nidana Samyutta. And the Nidana Samyutta takes up almost half of the book. This is a very important topic in early Buddhism. So this Nidana means cause or source or origin or condition, and is has the same meaning as Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination. But instead of calling it Paticca Samuppada Samyutta, which is maybe too long, they call it the Nidana Samyutta. Now there are many suttas concerning this topic. Most of it are in this book that we are going to go into, this particular chapter. But even in the Digha Nikaya, there's the longest sutta on this topic, Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination, and it is called the Nidana Sutta. Now, I quote here from the Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's introduction of his translation of the Samyutta Nikaya. It says here, dependent origination is one of the central teachings of early Buddhism, so vital to the teaching as a whole that the Buddha is quoted as saying in the Majjhima Nikaya, one who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma, and one who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination. So if you understand dependent origination, this chapter, the suttas in this chapter that we are going to go through, then you would have seen the Dhamma, and when you have seen the Dhamma, you would have attained stream entry. The ultimate purpose of the teaching on dependent origination is to expose the conditions that sustain the round of rebirths, samsara, so as to show what must be done to gain release from the round. So this topic exposes the conditions that sustain samsara. Actually goes step by step to unravel the origin of suffering. And there are 12 conditions. There are 12 conditions. So the Pali formula we often chant. It's avijja pacchaya sankhara, sankhara pacchaya vinyanang pacchaya namarupang, namarupang pacchaya salayatanang, like that, right up down to birth, jati, then all the other types of suffering. So when you recite in this way, it says ignorance gives rise to volition, and volition gives rise to consciousness, etc. So finally ends up with suffering. So this is called the origination forward sequence. In Pali is anuloma. Then the other way of reciting it, which we often do, is avijja veva asesa viraga nirodha sankhara nirodho sankhara nirodha, etc. So the other way is the cessation or reverse sequence. That means ignorance ceases, then volition ceases, and because of ignorance ceasing, then volition ceases, and when volition ceases, then consciousness ceases, in that order. In the end, suffering ceases. So at this point, we are going into the deeper part of the Dhamma, unlike the first book. So now, according to the traditional interpretation, these 12 links of dependent origination can be broken into 3 lifetimes: the past, the present, and the future. And they say it is because of the past ignorance and the past volition that in the present life you have consciousness, you have nama-rupa, you have six sense bases, contact, feeling. These are the present effects. And then in the present life, craving, clinging and existence causes future birth. And future birth will come along with aging and dying. So they break it up into 3 lifetimes. But I've written a book on this subject, dependent origination. I have explained that there are certain suttas that the Buddha has spoken where the Buddha only considers 2 lifetimes, present and future lifetime. And there are some monks also say that these 12 links you can refer to only 1 lifetime, the present lifetime, since the Buddha says that the Dhamma is sanditiko, can be seen in this present lifetime. So all the 12 links you should be able also to see in this present lifetime. But without explaining too much, we can go straight into the suttas in the Nidana Samyutta. Okay, now we go to the first sutta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anatta Pindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, Monks, Venerable Sir, those monks replied. The Blessed One said this, Monks, I will teach you dependent origination. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, those monks replied. The Blessed One said this, and what monks is dependent origination? With ignorance as condition, avijja, volition comes to be. Here, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi has translated as volitional formations. Volitional formations. And later, you can see the traditional interpretation by the later monks is that volitional formation, sankhara here, means karma. But as I've said in my book, Dependent Origination, I don't agree with it. Later you will see why. So here, instead of translating it as volitional formations, which Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi uses, I would just say volition, sankhara. In fact, in the 5 aggregates, you also have sankhara there. And in the 5 aggregates, 5 aggregates means the 5 aggregates of a being, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. So that is also basically body and mind. So because we take ourselves to be this body and this mind. So inside the 5 aggregates, you notice the 4th one is volition. And it's the same word, sankhara. So there it's mentioned to be volition. So here you can also call it volition. The same word, the same meaning. So with ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, name and form, nama-rupa, sometimes it's translated as mentality, materiality. With name and form as condition, the 6 sense bases, salayatana. With 6 sense bases as condition, contact, phassa. With contact as condition, feelings, vedana. With feeling as condition, craving, tanha. With craving as condition, clinging, upadana. With clinging as condition, existence, bhava. Here is translated as existence, but I think I prefer the word being. But never mind, for the moment we continue as with existence as condition, birth, jati. With birth as condition, aging and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair come to be. This in Pali is jara, maranang, soka, parideva, dukkha, domana, supayasa. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. This monks is called dependent origination. I stop here for a moment. So here you see, this whole chain of 12 links, dependent origination, is actually explaining the dependent origination of suffering. Because to untangle this mess of suffering, we have to understand where suffering comes from. So these 12 links is trying to explain where suffering comes from. You see the final link is called aging and dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. So this is the whole mass of suffering. Aging and sickening and dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, sometimes called grief and despair. So all this is suffering. So later you'll see when they explain backwards, the Buddha will ask, where does this aging and dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair come from? Comes from birth. Once you have birth, you must have aging and dying, etc. So it traces it the other way. So this is called dependent origination, and you always must remember when we say dependent origination, in the Buddha's teachings, it's always dependent origination of suffering to continue. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes cessation of volition. With the cessation of volition, cessation of consciousness. With the cessation of consciousness, cessation of name and form, nama-rupa, or mentality and materiality. With the cessation of mentality and materiality, cessation of the six sense bases. With the cessation of the six sense bases, cessation of contact. With the cessation of contact, cessation of feeling. With the cessation of feeling, cessation of craving. With the cessation of craving, cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging or attachment, cessation of existence or being. With the cessation of being, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. So here you see there are two ways of this dependent origination. The first one is the arising of suffering, and the other one, when it talks about cessation of each one of the links, is the cessation of suffering. Now we go into the second sutta, which explains each of these 12 conditions. At Savatthi, monks, I will teach you dependent origination, and I will analyze it for you. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, those monks replied. The Blessed One said this, and what monks is dependent origination? With ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness, exactly as in the preceding sutta. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. And what monks is aging and death? The aging of the various beings in the various orders of beings, the growing old, brokenness of teeth, greyness of hair, wrinkling of skin, decline of vitality, degeneration of the faculties. This is called aging. Passing away of the various beings from the various orders of beings, their perishing, break-up, disappearance, mortality, death, completion of time, the break-up of the aggregates, the laying down of the carcass. This is called death. Thus, this aging and this death are together called aging and death. Let's stop here for a moment. So here we see the explanation of aging and death is like for human beings. How a person grows old and then loses the teeth, the hair becomes white, the skin becomes wrinkled, decline of the vitality, etc. But this is not necessarily true all the time, because this dependent origination or suffering applies not only to human beings, but applies to all beings. So in the case of heavenly beings, you don't have this type of aging. Heavenly beings, they don't get white hair and broken teeth and wrinkled skin and all that. So this is a general explanation. It's not that it applies to every single being. Yes, also. And then what mounts is birth. The birth of the various beings into the various orders of beings, the being born, descent into the womb, production, the manifestation of the aggregates, the obtaining of the sense bases. This is called birth. This also, stop here, this also refers to like human birth and maybe like animal birth. But not necessarily all beings, because there are some beings that don't enter the womb, like here, it says descend. Descend means descend into the womb. So like heavenly beings, they are spontaneously born. What the Bible says, born of the Spirit, direct transformation. So must remember, sometimes this explanation is not always applicable to all beings. And what mounts is existence or being. There are these three kinds of existence or being. Sense sphere, existence or being. Form sphere, existence or being. Formless sphere, existence or being. This is called existence. Now this word, existence, bhava, is one of the hardest links to understand among these 12 links. So here, you see, here it says there are three types of beings. Sense sphere being, form sphere being, and formless sphere being. Because the Buddha says every world system, we have three levels. The lowest level is called the sensual desire realm, where you have male and female and all the beings are dominated by lust, sensual lust. And then slightly higher is the form realm. In the form realm, the beings have fine form and are reborn there because of having attained form jhana, rupa jhana. They have attained one-pointedness of mind. So when they are reborn in the form realm, they experience great bliss, and the bliss comes from within them, inside them, in the heart, in the mind, because of the state of their mind. So they are not dominated by lust. So there is no male and female. They are all unisex. Like Brahma. Brahma is only the lowest of the heavens. Then the higher heavens you go, the more bliss they experience. Then the third one is called the formless realm. This formless realm, some books say they are so called because they have no form, but it cannot be true because in the suttas, the Buddha says you cannot have consciousness without it being accompanied by the other of the five aggregates. These five aggregates, once you have consciousness, you have a being with consciousness, that consciousness must reside in a body. Okay, so you must have body, and when you have body and you have consciousness, the others must be there, namely feeling, perception, volition, together with consciousness. So the body is the physical part, the mental part are these four things, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. So it is called formless because it is so fine, their bodies are so fine that other beings cannot see them. Even the form beings, those who have attained rupa jhana, they cannot see these beings in the arupa jhana plane, because arupa jhana is a much higher jhana, meditative state. So because the bodies are so fine and so big, the other beings cannot see them. That's why they are called formless. But they have a form, a very fine form. So here, existence of being, it says there are three types of being. So very often people interpret this word bhava to mean existence, the world, the sense sphere world, the form sphere world, the formless sphere world. But my understanding is a bit different. My understanding is this word bhava should be being. Being meaning a being perceives that he exists, Because the suttas very often talks about the concept a being has that I am, I exist. Once you have this perception that I exist, then this will bring about the previous factor, birth. Once you feel you exist in the world, the moment you come into the world, that is the birth. So that's why existence, once there is existence, there is birth. So this existence is not the material world existence, it's the existence of that self, the ego, that feeling I am, I exist. Now, once you have that I am or I exist, then you have a being. Suddenly I am a being. For example, a tree may have consciousness. Tree has a certain type of consciousness. But a tree does not have the perception I am or I exist, right? So because the tree does not have the perception I am or I exist, so it doesn't feel that it is born into the world. It doesn't feel that it suffers in the world. It's because we all putujanas, all beings except the arahant, because we have this perception of I am. In fact, this I am is the last, I think, to be eliminated before a person becomes liberated. One of the 5 higher factors is conceit, mana. Mana is a Pali word. The English translation is conceit. I think this conceit means that feeling of I am or I exist. So this word, bhava, henceforth I will try to remember to translate it as being, not existence. And what monks is, so this is a very important word to understand, that once you have being only, then only you feel you exist in the world, you feel that you are born into the world. And what monks is clinging. There are these 4 kinds of clinging. Clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to rules and vows, clinging to a doctrine of self. This is called clinging. These are the 4 types of clinging. The first one, clinging to sensual pleasures, kamupadana. Clinging is upadana, or attachment. The second one, clinging to views, dupadana. The third one is clinging to rules and vows, sila batu padana. You see here, sila is rules. The other one is vata, is vows. Then clinging to the doctrine of a self, atta vadu padana. So this is clinging. This one there's no difficulty in understanding. And what monks is craving. There are these 6 classes of craving. Craving for forms, craving for sounds, craving for odors, craving for taste, craving for tactile objects, touch, craving for mental phenomena, thoughts. This is called craving. So here we crave for the 6 sense objects. And what monks is feeling? There are these 6 classes of feeling. Feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of ear contact, feeling born of nose contact, feeling born of tongue contact, feeling born of body contact, feeling born of mind contact. This is called feeling. So here feeling is like born of eye contact means you see something and then a feeling arises. Ear contact means you hear a sound, a certain sound, and then a feeling arises, etc. And what monks is contact? There are these 6 classes of contact. Eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact. In the suttas, it is mentioned these 6 sense organs, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind. Any one of them are the condition that you have a sense organ and you have an object, and then the consciousness will arise. And these 3 come together when they contact. That is contact. And following contact, you have feeling, perception, volition and all that. So this is contact of the 6 senses. And what monks are the 6 sense bases? The eye base, the ear base, the nose, tongue, body, mind. These are the 6 sense bases. And what mounts is name and form, or mentality and materiality, feeling, perception, volition, contact, attention. This is called name. The four great elements and the form derived from the four great elements. This is called form. Thus, this name and this form are together called name and form. This name, nama rupa, name and form, another translation is mentality and materiality. And sometimes people translate this as body and mind. Nama rupa, the Pali word here is nama rupa, is not body and mind. Because you see here, nama is feeling, perception, volition, contact, attention. There is no consciousness here. And then form is the four great elements, and the form derived from the four great elements. So nama rupa is devoid of consciousness. So if there is no consciousness, it cannot be mind, body and mind. The body part is there, but not the mind part. So actually, this nama rupa is phenomena. Phenomena is the object of consciousness. The next link here is consciousness. And what mounts is consciousness? There are these 6 classes of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. This is called consciousness. So these consciousness and nama rupa, they always come together. According to the Buddha, they are like 2 sheaves of reed standing supporting each other, leaning against each other. If one of them falls, the other one also falls. If one of them stands, the other also stands. They depend on each other. So vijnana, consciousness, and nama rupa, mentality, materiality, always come together and cease together. They are one pair. You cannot separate them. They are like twins. You cannot separate them. So from here you can understand, since you cannot separate them, that nama rupa is actually the object of consciousness. When you are conscious, you have to be conscious of something. That something that you are conscious of is nama rupa. Okay? So in English it's called phenomena. Phenomena, what we are conscious of. So we are conscious of 2 types of things. One is we are conscious of mental activity. The other one is we are conscious of physical object and mental object. So the mental object is nama. Here it says feeling, perception, volition, contact, and attention. So we are conscious. This is the mental part we are conscious of. And then the physical part we are conscious of is the 4 great elements and the form derived from the 4 great elements. These 4 great elements designate the physical world. But the physical world, since the physical world only exists in consciousness, in a sense it's not real. It's just a perception of consciousness. We perceive it. And because the physical world is a perception of consciousness, that's why it has 4 characteristics. One is the earth element. Here when you talk about the 4 great elements, one is the earth elements, means solidity. For example, I touch this table, it feels solid. But actually it's only a perception. If my mind is strong enough, like Arahant with psychic powers, I can perceive this as soft. It doesn't have to be hard. Right? So this physical world is just a perception, right? And the other one is earth, water. Water is the characteristic of water is that it coheres together. It coheres together and forms a shape. So because we have water in our body, we see ourselves in a certain shape. If we dehydrate our body, take out all the water, the vapor from our body totally, the whole body becomes like a powder. It will collapse like a powder. So that is the characteristic of water. It coheres things together to give it a form, a shape. Earth, water, fire. Fire is the heat element. Heat element. Suppose we touch something, we feel it hot or cold. So that is a perception. And then the last one is wind. Earth, water, fire, wind. Wind is a movement, characteristic of movement. So like in our body, we have the wind element. So things move in our body, the blood moves, the air in our body moves, the food in our stomach moves, all because of the wind element. Okay. So you see, these physical qualities, earth, water, fire, wind, they are only a perception, So because of that, the mind is very important. If your mind is pure, your mind, you have a good heart, the world, all this perception in the world is comfortable to you. For example, you don't feel too hot, you don't feel too cold. But if your karma is so bad, you have an evil mind, you may perceive yourself in hell, where it's terribly cold or it's terribly hot with the flames of hell burning you. All that is created by the mind. So the world actually is created by our mind. That's why our mind is so important. So that's talking about Namarupa. So Namarupa is mentality and materiality, what consciousness perceives. And after consciousness is volition. And what mounts is volition. There are these three kinds of volition. Body volition, verbal volition, and mental volition. Here the word is sankara. So in Pali, is kaya sankara, vachi sankara, and chitta sankara. Okay. So these three, kaya, vachi, and chitta sankara, if you study the suttas, you will meet, this is one set of three sankaras, kaya, vachi, and chitta sankara. If you study the suttas, you will meet a second set called almost the same, kaya sankara, vachi sankara, and mano sankara. The last one is different, mano sankara. So these two sets are used in different circumstances. In Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination, you will find that the sankara is always these three, kaya, vachi, and chitta sankara. But in some other suttas, when they talk about karma, creating karma, then it is kaya, vachi, and mano sankara. So the problem is with the later monks, they seem to have confused the two. And in the traditional interpretation of this word sankara here, it says volitional formations or volition. They always associate volition with karma, with creating karma. They say because of ignorance in the past, we created karma. So because of creating karma, now we are reborn with consciousness. But I feel that's a mistake. If you read my book, Dependent Origination, I say this word volition has to do with the will to live. And because of ignorance, we all beings have a very strong will to live. The will to live, not to die. So because of the will to live, the moment we die, our consciousness starts again. So that is sankara. And what mounts is ignorance. Not knowing suffering, not knowing the origin of suffering, not knowing the cessation of suffering, not knowing the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called ignorance. Thus mounts, with ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness. With consciousness as condition, Namarupa, mentality, materiality. With Namarupa as condition, the six sense bases come into existence. With six sense basis as condition, you have contact. With contact as condition, you have feeling. With feeling as condition, you have craving, then clinging, being, birth, aging and death. So this is the origin of the whole mass of suffering. And similarly, when ignorance ceases, then volition ceases, and then consciousness ceases, and then mentality, materiality ceases one by one. Now, I just go through this again. Out of these 12 links, you find most of them we can understand. Two are stumbling blocks. One is sankara, the other one is bhava. Sankara, I translate as volition. Here it says volitional formations. The other one is bhava. Bhava here it says existence, but I think it is being. So keep in mind these two these two sources of conflict in interpretation. So now I go through this again, how this suffering comes about. So the first condition is ignorance, not knowing the Four Noble Truths. When we don't understand the Four Noble Truths, we think the world is a nice place to live. So because of ignorance, we have volition. Volition is the will to live, interpretation, the will to live. It's only the Arahants, the Buddhas, they have understood the Four Noble Truths, and then they have no more will to live. They let go of the will to live, right? Whereas all other beings, you have a very strong will to live, volition, sankhara. And this will to live conditions consciousness. Because of sankhara, the will to live, you have consciousness. Consciousness continues. And then when consciousness arises, it must always come together with phenomena, mentality, materiality, the object of consciousness. Okay? So this is a pair. And once you have this consciousness, then and mentality, materiality, then you must have a body. And this body has a six sense basis. Okay? And then the six sense basis, once you have a body with six senses, then there must be contact. Contact at the six sense basis. And then once there is contact, either from seeing or hearing, etc., feeling arises. Okay? So this feeling, if it is pleasant feeling, it gives rise to craving. Once you enjoy something, you crave for it. And once you crave for it, and what are these things you crave for? You crave for forms, crave for sounds, crave for odors, crave for taste, crave for touch, crave for mental phenomena. So once you have craving, then you cling to it. Okay? You cling to it. And when you cling to it, when you enjoy something and you cling to it, you always have the feeling, I enjoy. I enjoy. That's why sensual pleasures in the world it's a great obstacle to liberation. Once we enjoy life, we have a good life, we enjoy it, then we don't want to let go. Because you have the perception, I am enjoying life. Why should I let go of life? It's only when you have suffering that you want to find a way out of samsara. So once you have that clinging, then you have that I exist, that I am, that is the being, bhava. So once you have the being, you have the feeling, I have come into the world, that is birth. I come to the world, birth. Once you have birth, then you have aging, sickening, dying, and all different types of suffering. So this is how suffering comes about. So this part, I have to take time to explain because this is the foundation. If you understand these 12 links very well, then you will understand the subsequent suttas. Otherwise, no point. You go too fast, you don't understand. Is there anything about these 12 links you want to ask?